Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to look straight into the mirror of human life and decode the actual mechanics of life writing. Have you ever wondered what it literally takes for someone to just sit down, look back at their entire existence, and put it all out there on a page? It's a bold, honestly sometimes terrifying undertaking. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how autobiographies work, what makes them tick, and then we're going to apply all of that to one of the most famous life stories ever written, Mahatma Gandhi's Satyana Prayogo, or as it's known in English, My Experiments with Truth. Okay, so let's set the stage here. To really grasp the stakes, think about the contrast between two very different types of writing. On one hand, you have the novel, right? A novelist gets to use pure imagination to craft stories. They shape the world exactly how they want it. But an autobiography, that is bound by a much stricter rulebook. It's totally grounded in harsh reality, a factual basis, and actual events. There's really no room for making things up. The author has to explain real lived experiences in a way that we, the readers, can fully grasp and connect with. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover unlocking the autobiography, traits of a life story, and the hidden flaws. Then we'll shift gears into our case study, looking at Gandhi's unique style, honesty and humility, and finally, society, culture, and truth. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Unlocking the Autobiography, the basics of life writing. Now, unlike other genres, an autobiography has a few absolute core characteristics. First up, it uses a first-person narrative. The author is writing using I, me, my, or we. And because of this, we get a highly personal perspective. We're experiencing the world entirely through the author's eyes. Our source material points out a brilliant example. Reading Charlie Chaplin's autobiography literally forces you to see the world exactly as Chaplin saw it. Plus, it requires deep introspection. The writer has to look inward, examine their struggles, how they solve them, and really observe their own nature. Moving on to Section 2, Traits of a Life Story, and how memories are actually structured. When you think about it, life stories typically follow a strict chronological timeline. I mean, it's the most logical way to present a life, right? You start with childhood, move into youth, then adulthood, and finally into old age. This linear progression is super powerful because it lets us witness the author's physical, mental, and emotional growth over time. While some authors might play around with this order a bit, this timeline is the standard backbone of the whole genre. But here's the thing, autobiographies are so much more than just a personal timeline. They're basically incredible time capsules. When an author writes about their life, they're inadvertently capturing the social context, the cultural rituals, the religious beliefs, and the lifestyles of their specific era. The source uses a really poignant example here, Anne Frank's diary. By reading her deeply personal account, we're also handed a preserved historical reality of the horrific atrocities and inhumane treatment of Jewish people during the Second World War. The personal literally becomes historical, which brilliantly illustrates the value of the genre. But, it begs a pretty crucial question. Can we really trust human memory? Think about it for a second. If you were to write a book about your life right this minute, would your memory be 100% perfect? Would you willingly include your most embarrassing middle school haircut or your absolute worst mistakes? And that brings us perfectly to Section 3, the hidden flaws and the danger of the ego. Let's be real. Autobiographies are inherently flawed, mainly for three reasons. First, the reliance on memory. Memories fade, they change, which means facts can easily be presented incompletely or just flat out wrong. Second, author's bias. We all have egos, right? Writers are human. It is incredibly tempting to hide your flaws, leave out the stuff you don't like, and maybe, just maybe, exaggerate your achievements. Personal bias can totally overshadow the actual truth. And third, there are some really tricky ethical questions. Writing about yourself is one thing, but writing about your parents, your friends, or coworkers without their permission, exposing their bad sides just to make a better story, that crosses a rather fuzzy ethical line. All right, Section 4, Gandhi's unique style and breaking the rules. So this brings us to a huge shift in our analysis as we introduce our case study, Mahatma Gandhi's Satyana Prayogo. This is a book that absolutely shattered those normal autobiographical egos and broke literally all the standard rules we just talked about. For starters, Gandhi once stated that our literature should be understood even by a farmer. He had this unwavering commitment to simple, clear language. In his autobiography, he completely avoided complex vocabulary, heavy sentence structures, or showing off his intellect. He wrote as if he was having a totally natural, simple conversation with the reader, making sure his life story was accessible to absolutely everyone. Moving to Section 5, Honesty and Humility, and the Brutal Self-Critique. The absolute most crucial point here is that Gandhi practiced brutal self-critique. Remember how we just said authors usually hide their flaws? Well, Gandhi did the exact opposite. Instead of using his book to brag about leading a massive national revolution, which, by the way, he humbly called himself just a small part of, he confessed his deepest flaws. He openly wrote about not being a good student. He admitted to stealing as a child and causing his father pain. He shared his really intense personal struggles with maintaining brahmacharya, or celibacy. He documented his failures with complete honesty and extreme humility. He held absolutely nothing back. And because he was so remarkably honest, he gained immense trust from his readers. He wasn't just telling stories for entertainment. He used his personal experiences to actually teach. For example, writing that fasting is a powerful weapon for justice. He viewed fasting not just as a physical act, but as a potent tool for real change. His ultimate goal was to impart practical, ethical lessons drawn directly from his own trials.
Finally, Section 6, Society, Culture, and Truth, the ultimate experiment.
Gandhi was profoundly shaped by what he read and what he saw around him. The source material notes that a childhood play about King Harishchandra instilled in him this supreme value of truth. Also, the Bhagavad Gita deeply influenced him, teaching him nonviolence, simplicity, and compassion for all living beings. But he didn't just keep these lessons to himself. He used them as a lens to harshly critique the societal evils of his time. Like when he was in South Africa, he openly criticized the toxic system of apartheid. And upon returning to India, he firmly attacked the deeply entrenched caste system and the practice of untouchability. The greatest result of all these experiments was satyagraha, a word that literally combines truth and insistence. This was his unique, active experiment in nonviolent resistance. It meant opposing the British through strictly peaceful means, completely rejecting violence, but doing it with such firmness and such insistence that the opponent simply could not ignore it. It was, quite literally, truth in active, unwavering motion. So, as we wrap up this explainer, we've seen how autobiographies can act as a mirror for the author's soul, and how Gandhi used that mirror not for vanity, but for brutal, world-changing honesty. I want to leave you with this provocative thought. If you sat down to write your life story today, stripping away all ego, all bias, and all excuses, would you be brave enough to truly experiment with the truth? Think about the legacy you're building right now. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and as always, keep questioning and keep learning.